The story of the Bridgeview Mosque begins thousands of miles away in the Palestinian village of Beytunia. Hundreds of peasants left the village for Chicago in the early 1900s, hoping to make a better living. They earned money as salesmen, shopkeepers, and factory workers. Many could not read or write English. Beytunia farmer Khalil Zaid arrived in 1939 and rented a room along the 18th Street in the heart of the Arab community on the south side. While they wanted to succeed in America and fit into society, they also wanted a place of their own to practice their religion and hold on to their culture. But in all of Chicago, there was no real mosque or official religious leader for Arab Muslims. About 30 families from Beytunia, including Zaid's, decided that something needed to be done. They formed the Mosque Foundation and started raising money for a proper place of worship. The women held bake sales and sold candy bars in front of grocery stores, and the money trickled in. Zaid stepped forward to become the group's first prayer leader, holding services in a storefront. He had no formal Islamic training, but he considered himself a religious man. Zaid and the other immigrants started looking for property. They settled on Bridgeview, a village just southwest of Chicago with 6 Christian churches and plenty of inexpensive land. There, Zaid and the others drove down a bumpy dirt road to look at a piece of property between the railroad tracks and a trailer park in the shadow of heavy industry. After 19 years of work, this was all the Beytunia families could afford. In the wake of the 6-day war in Israel, a new wave of immigrants began to arrive. These were people with professional degrees and deep pockets connected to the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. When the new immigrants arrived in Chicago, they vowed to restart the Bridgeview Mosque project by raising money from their wealthy connections in the Middle East. These promises helped them win election to the mosque board of directors, and by 1978, they led the building effort. The Beytunia families welcomed the newcomers' help. One of the new leaders was a Palestinian named Omar Najib, who had studied in Egypt and earned a law degree at DePaul University. He frequently carried a briefcase and always wore a jacket and tie to prayers on Friday. The 35-year-old Najib, the only Muslim lawyer the mosque leaders knew, became the mosque's attorney and helped write its constitution. Other mosque officials fired off telegrams overseas and traveled to the Middle East several times, targeting countries such as Saudi Arabia, which had started giving away its new oil wealth to help spread its rigid form of Islam. The money poured into Bridgeview. In the fall of 1981, just in time for Ramadan, the mosque opened its doors. The Beytunia families finally had realized their dream, or so they thought. Almost immediately, the new mosque leaders made major changes. They removed Khalil Zaid as prayer leader and replaced him with someone who had more training. Ahmed Zaki Hamid, a conservative Islamic scholar from Egypt. He quickly angered the congregation's women by chastising them for smoking. Soon the mosque leaders, adhering to a strict interpretation of Islam, told the congregation's women to cover their hair and wear looser clothing. During social events, the women were separated from the men. As the rift deepened between the two mosque factions, Najib, the lawyer, prepared documents that would turn the deed of the mosque over to the North American Islamic Trust, the bank of the Muslim Brotherhood. Najib argued that giving the mosque's deed to Nate would forever preserve the building as a mosque. He urged a group of old-timers, the American Arabian Ladies Society, which had gained part ownership of the mosque property through bake sales and other fundraisers, to sign on to the plan. But the old-timers did not want the mosque turned over to an outside group with a growing reputation for fundamentalism. Increasingly distressed, the Beytunia families decided to fight back. An anonymous group of Beytunia sympathizers put out flyers. "Islam is our religion," one said. "It is the Islam of flexibility and commitment to faith, rather than fundamentalism and tension." Another flyer alleged that the essence of Nate is the Muslim Brotherhood, which had started its deliberate and distorted means of dividing the community and tearing down what we have been attempting to build for 1/2 of a century. The Beytunia faction began a whirlwind membership drive. They wanted to sign up hundreds of new members to force the mosque officials to drop plans to align with Nate. But mosque leaders did not immediately accept new members, arguing that they had the authority to screen applicants to ensure that they were devout enough, court records show. In the fall of 1981, the Nate deal was signed. The same day, the mosque women's group sued to block the agreement. The women and their male supporters said the new leaders had deceived members about their true agenda. It is obvious that the board stole the mosque from its members, one filing said. The Jib represented the mosque in court. In filings, he said the lawsuit was based on a, quote, personal and tribal vendetta, unquote. He argued that Zaid was uneducated, could not read English, and lacked the qualifications to be the mosque religious leader. After 26 days of testimony, a Cook County judge ruled in 1983 that the newcomers had not acted improperly. In a later hearing, he described the case as simply a bitter factional dispute between two religious corporations. The hardliners were now firmly in control. After studying Islam at a Saudi Arabian university, he came to Chicago to teach Arabic to African American Muslims. In 1985, at age 28, Sheikh Jamal became prayer leader in Bridgeview. Part of his salary would be paid by the government of Saudi Arabia, a stipend that totaled about $2,000 a month by 2004, according to Saudi embassy officials in Washington. As a child, he was inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood. Growing up on the West Bank, he learned about a nearby graveyard for Brotherhood members who had died fighting for a Palestinian homeland. He later brought his own children to the cemetery to pay homage to the fighters, according to a tape of a speech he gave at a Muslim conference in 2000. At a prayer service last May, Sheikh Jamal raised $50,000 for Palestinian activist Sami El-Arian, a former professor at the University of South Florida who is charged with being the U.S. leader of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The Muslim Brotherhood stole the Bridgeview Mosque and turned it into a nest of Hamas activity in America.